Welcome to ThinkTech. It's Monday morning, and it's a very important day today. Today we have our ThinkTech meeting this afternoon, board of directors, underwriters, and staff, and hosts all getting together at the AIA Honolulu Center down the block. Looking forward to that. But also looking forward to a discussion with Michael Kramer, who is with Natural Investments on the Big Island, am I right?
Yes, Kona.
Kona, where God lives, you know. And he's a managing partner, a founding partner, I guess, in that company, Natural Investments. This is Community Matters. We're going to talk about his new book, The Resilient Investor, and it just got published recently.
3 weeks ago.
So, welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here. I really appreciate you coming in. I know it's not easy. You've got...
Happy to.
Yeah. You have to visit more often so we can catch up with you more often.
Sure.
I think every responsible citizen, needs to know what you're talking about. This is not just a drill. We're all responsible for our own lives and investments these days. Nobody is going to bail us out. We have to look after our own selves.
That's very true.
Yeah. Anyway, so tell us about yourself and how you got into the whole idea of natural investing.
Well, I've been a long-time permaculture educator, 25 years, and permaculture is a philosophy of sustainability. And one of the topics in that paradigm is what do you do with finance? And so I began to teach sustainable and responsible investing many, many years ago. I was also a client of this very firm that I'm now part of. And so I really was walking my talk and I was teaching about it. And then they asked me to join the firm since I was such a proponent. And that was 15 years ago, and I just really believe that money is a tool for positive change. It is value neutral, so we can ascribe negative or positive values to it. And I guess you could say on some level I'm an anti-capitalist in recovery, because I really only was looking at the negative side, and then I started to realize all the wonderful positive things you could do, and that really was a watershed moment in my life, because I suddenly realized that I could be part of the change that I wanted to see in the world, and using money as a tool for social, economic, and political change.
How did you get into the idea of sustainable, resilient investing? I mean, you have a different sort of worldview than most stockbrokers,
right?
Or counselors, financial advisors.
Yes.
So where did you get into that? What is it that happened in your life that made you go that direction?
Well, I actually came to the financial part later in life. I've always been an activist and an educator around environmental issues, and that was my previous career. And so I just have this desire to leave the world a better place for my kids and future generations. I guess it's just a calling. It's been with me my whole life. It wasn't any epiphany moment in my life. I've just always wanted to help people live in harmony with each other and natural systems. And so there's many ways to do that. You can do that on a piece of land. You can do that, by going out into nature. But I really was beginning to realize that some of the invisible things that are the glue that holds society's fabric together are things like politics and policy and money and business. And these are, in many ways, some of the ways that change happens faster than in other ways. And so as much as I was interested in social movements and protest and advocacy in those realms, I really decided to go inside the system and see if I could help transform capitalism from the inside.
Wow.
Instead of being on the outside.
No small task.
No, it's a hugely ambitious goal, but I am not attached to any particular timeline on this. This is going to take time. And I think all we can do is be passionate about it and educate and try to help people, understand that ethics matter when it comes to business. And I've just always believed in that. To me, it's common sense. Unfortunately, it's still uncommon, but I kind of think it is common that you can profit fine while being responsible and caring for employees and customers and the community and the environment. It seems very common sense to me that those things are not competing with one another. But the history of capitalism says otherwise. It's been exploitive, and I'd like to take that exploitation idea away from capitalism. Yeah. It doesn't serve anybody in the long run.
The 20th
sure.
century.
Our whole society is built on that.
And all
sure.
That, yeah.
But it's still going on. There's still people who believe that we have that right to make money by any means necessary. And yeah, we do have the right, but I'm not sure it's really what we want as a civilization.
Yeah.
it creates too many ills, too many inequities,
Yeah.
whether it's the class gap.
We should be able to do better now.
I would hope so. I kind of feel like we have to now if we're going to save our species.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like this is a survival issue at this point
No,
because climate change is so real.
Are you and your company, are they unique, or do you find other such companies springing up in other places, even
Yeah.
in Hawaii?
We are the only firm in Hawaii, and we have been for 15 years, that has this as an exclusive focus. So that's mildly disappointing. That being said, we have 3 offices in this state, and we're happy to
Oh, is that
serve
right?
anybody on Maui.
Where,
and
Maui?
Maui, and then also on the Hilo side.
Okay.
Have yet to open a Honolulu office, but I'm certainly open to that idea. We have 9 offices around the country. There are not that many firms that have this exclusive focus. There's many investment advisors who might have it as a small portion of their book of business, but it is our exclusive focus, and there's not that many. That being said, our trade association does a research study every 2 years.
What trade association?
It's
is that?
called USSIF, the Social Investment Forum, and it studies our industry and publishes data every 2 years. And now we count all the professionally managed money in this space. It's 17% of all the professionally managed money in the market.
Interesting.
That's almost $7 trillion. And that was a 76% jump in only 2 years.
So what is happening?
What is happening is there's a mass awakening going on.
Yeah.
People are realizing that business as usual is essentially contributing to a long decline of our society
They're
and
willing
humanity.
to put their money where their mouth.
And they're
to take
finally
a risk on
willing.
that notion.
I think the other thing that's going on is the next generation, the younger generation, is inheriting a lot of wealth from previous generations, and this is a natural stance for them. They've grown up with this. So those are the types of clients we tend to attract, a lot of young people who've inherited portfolios and they don't like what they have in there, and they do not want to be part of that, and they don't want to be contributing to things they don't believe in anymore. So we help them align their values with what they do believe in, and help them steer their portfolio accordingly.
So is it, if I come to you and I say, Michael, I'd like to invest in, sustainable things and what do you call it, impact companies?
Right.
Am I going to make as much money as if I get some high-pressure stock company, brokerage house on
Right.
Wall Street who is committed to getting me the highest return possible in the world?
Right. Well, we're just as committed to getting the highest possible return. That objective remains the same. All I can do is say that the research shows you don't sacrifice return.
You don't
You do not.
sacrifice return.
You don't. There's plenty of ways to make money without necessarily owning big oil or tobacco. Yes, those are highly profitable industries, but you can make return without necessarily needing those industries. So yes, it's a slightly narrower universe, but it's not as narrow as one might think. And so you can have full diversification, you can invest all over the world. It's just about being slightly more selective and not just going with everything.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the research shows there's no compromise, and these are industry studies, academic studies. The UN did a study 7 years ago, sort of demystifying this idea. There is the mythology of underperformance that the Wall Street Journal and others love to, tout, but they're just wrong. It's
Mm-hmm.
just really not the case. And
Well,
that's fortunate for us.
So can you give me a little more of a drill down on exactly how you conduct this kind of impact investing?
Right.
You start out with a basket of stocks. You exclude the ones that are having a negative impact on the world and the
Yes.
environment especially, and then you focus on selecting the best ones that are left, the ones
Right.
that do have a low impact and a better effect on the environment. And I suppose you're also looking at returns the whole time.
Oh, of course. Returns are constant throughout. We never stop doing that. Yeah, there's kind of a 2-stage process when it comes to screening. One is what you want to steer clear of, these avoidance screens, and that can be certain sectors, and tobacco and fossil fuel might be some of those sectors, but it also might be excluding things based on corporate practices, regardless of what kind of sector they're in. Companies that have human rights trouble, companies that don't necessarily honor international labor standards, or might have sweatshops or child labor, companies that are inherently polluting and don't seem to be trying to do anything about it, companies that are cruel to animals, companies that abuse indigenous rights in the communities they serve. There's so many environmental, social issues, even governance issues around boards of directors and how executives are paid, like the excessive executive pay is an issue that we screen for.
Yeah.
You know, the ratio between the chief executives and the entry-level workers, and looking at equity in labor within a company, looking at whether there's women and minorities in upper management and on the boards of these companies,
Yeah.
and really trying to hold them accountable to say, you know, these are best practices for companies that want to be considered good corporate citizens. And companies that are willing to embrace these ideas are going to get our support, and those that don't want to deal with it at all are likely to be avoided. And then there's, you know, certain sectors, whether it be, you know, alcohol or pornography or gambling, and for some people, military contractors. It really depends on the person. You know, people have different values, and our job is to listen very carefully to what they care about, what they don't want, and what they do want, and try to make a good fit
So
for
some
them.
people, they don't mind alcohol.
Some people
don't
don't.
mind gambling.
That's
and
right.
So forth. So
Right. I'm
have
giving you some of
different-
the common ones that we see.
But you can go either way on that.
You can go-
tailor. This is designer portfolios.
Yes, there are conservative, you know, Catholic clients, and then there are progressive liberal clients, and values are values, and there's things they're going to have in common, things they don't. It's fine. It's really up to the investor. The investor should be really the one making these decisions, so we get to listen to them, and then we make decisions. Now, it's not just publicly traded. You know, a lot of the startups that go on here in Hawaii and elsewhere are also part of this. How do we build the green economy from private companies? And that's where a lot of the more excitement is for a lot of investors, but it's also where a lot of the risk is. And at the same time, you know, this is where a lot of attention is going in food and agriculture and in renewable energy, and just locally owned businesses of all kinds, where people feel like they can have a more direct relationship with their money. And that, I think, is a trend that's only likely to continue.
Is that happening elsewhere? I mean, the company
Yes.
is in other states, right?
Yes, we're in 8 states.
So are you doing that state by state? In other
Yes.
words, if I have an office in, say, San Francisco,
Yeah.
then I would do the same kind of analysis for the
Yes.
San Francisco
We
market.
all do the same type of work in our firm. There's 12 of us all around the country. And we all co-invest in things together. It's not just
Very
you know,
cool,
local.
very cool,
We,
very cool.
you know, there's all kinds of responsible national companies or regional companies that are going national, and we look at all of it. We want to help increase food self-sufficiency, you know, deal with renewable energy, more organic, biodegradable, natural fibers, biodegradables, recyclables. These are the up-and-coming industries that are only going to grow. Clean tech, energy efficiency. You know, this is a boom economy for these sectors, and we really want to be in on that, and
How
so do
much
our
of your
clients.
portfolio, your, what do you call it, your money under management, call it,
Yeah.
is into, you know, local entrepreneurship?
That's a great question. It's probably only 10% or so, but I don't have the exact figure. Our firm, we manage almost $250 million. So, but what we're noticing is that more and more new investors that come to us really want to move in this direction. We get more phone calls and more inquiries along these lines than ever before. Part of it is the risk in the system. You know, with the crisis that happened 7 years ago, and the fact that the financial reform has not really occurred, Congress has not really followed through with enacting, and they're undermining a lot of those Dodd-Frank reforms. And I think people are a little bit nervous. The volatility is the new normal. I don't think it's a good thing, and I think people are looking for, well, where else can I go? And part of that is in the community. And it's not to say the community doesn't have risks, but it's a different kind of risk. It's not what we would call systemic risk. You know, the entire global economy is kind of one type of risk, and we're all interconnected globally. And that's both a good thing and a fragile thing when there's a domino effect in the global economy. So I think one of the reasons we wrote this book was to say, look, you should probably be diversifying way more than you've ever thought of diversifying. It's not just about bonds and stocks anymore.
Yeah, well, I want to get to that in a second, but
Sure.
This, what you described sounds like more work for you. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess you're alone in the Big Island, or you have somebody else with you?
We've got somebody on the east side of the island, but
Okay,
yes.
so it's just two of you.
Yeah.
And you each have your own markets, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah.
But, you know, to learn all this stuff on a daily
Yeah.
basis, to watch the blips on all these issues on a
Yeah.
daily basis, and to also watch the local entrepreneurs, which requires a
Yes.
fair amount of time, because it's, you know, you got to get down in the trench with them somehow.
Sure.
That's more hard work, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's so meaningful. I mean, this is what I love to do.
Yeah.
I love being part of the solutions, and I absolutely want to find the best things to invest in, and I don't mind, doing this work to analyze a company's environmental and social practices, because then it gives clients a real confidence that they know that they're putting their money to work in a good way. So I want to, I have to, and I enjoy it. So I don't mind working extra hard. But unlike most brokers, we have we have a smaller number of clients. So it's very high touch.
Yeah.
We're not trying to build some big empire. We really get to know our clients. It's a very high touch relationship.
They stay with you.
And they tend to stay with us, unless they need their money for other things, of course, which many of them do. But they really like that we're out there. And it's not just, avoiding things and supporting good things. Sometimes we're buying shares in a company in order to engage their senior management in changing of policies and procedures. I like to tell the story that I spent a long time with Costco senior management trying to help them adopt a sustainable seafood policy. So part of when you own shares of these companies, you have a voice. And you can be at the table with other sustainable and responsible investors.
Yeah.
But we all pool our resources as an industry, so we have
Okay.
millions of shares.
Okay.
And so when we go to Costco or Home Depot or anybody and we say, look, we're an industry here that cares, we are shareholders, we want you to do well, it's not antagonistic, and we want to help you succeed in a better way. And why don't you look at what some of these options are? And it does work. And Costco, did embrace this. They're not going to sell about a dozen endangered species anymore. They're going to move into wild salmon and away from farm raised.
It's a big thing.
They're going to hold their shellfish manufacturers in Southeast Asia to higher environmental standards. So this is all voluntary. This is what you want. You want it to all happen voluntarily without some kind of regulatory mandate. If it doesn't work, we will go to a shareholder vote and have shareholders vote on these things. We'll file resolutions. About 300 resolutions are filed, in fact, every year in our industry. But in some cases, that's defeat, because what you really want is the voluntary admission that this is good for business.
But if they don't, play the game the way you want, you always have the chance of selling the stock and going somewhere else.
It's true, but then you've lost your voice and your power. Yeah. So ideally, you want to own the company and help them see the light. You want to help them see this is good for business. This will attract a new type of customer that maybe they didn't know was avoiding them. Yeah. This is increasing their market share amongst their competitors. There's a lot. The business case for sustainability is now fairly well established, even at that level, and that some of the smart ones get it. Yeah. And that's really nice to see. We're beginning to see a little bit of competition in corporate America between who can be the greener company. That's what we want. That's what we want to see.
So now you must communicate with your investors about this. So
sure.
You must, just as you work harder, to examine, the way companies are conducting themselves, you must be passing all that information back to investors.
Sure.
How do you do that?
Well, we publish a quarterly newsletter, of course, and we do an annual social impact report for our clients so they can see the summary of all this activism that we've been doing on their behalf. This is what they're paying us to do, in fact. And it's not just what we do with companies. We're also involved in Washington with regulatory issues with the SEC and with Congress, trying to help them have the proper oversight. One of the things and I'm on the National Policy Committee for my industry. And
your industry being the impact investment
the socially responsible investment industry. And so we're very active. We would like to see companies mandatorily required to disclose their environmental and social practices. We'd like to see that as part of the annual filings. That's going to take us a while to get there, but we think that's how investors can make good decisions about what companies they own, is if they understand where the risks are. And companies that have social and environmental risks either need to fix those risks or be told that they're not going to be owned anymore, because investors don't want to own companies with those kind of liabilities. It can affect the bottom line. It does affect the bottom line. So we really think that that information should now be required.
Yeah.
Now it is Bloomberg, for all the analysts, does have social and environmental information in there. It's all company reported, voluntary, but we'd love to see it required. So we work on things like that.
You mentioned earlier that since 2008, you see that movie Charles Ferguson, No Way Out? That was a fabulous movie about what happened.
Yes.
He's a great movie maker.
Yes.
But there's been no action taken, no real solution to the problems that led to that debacle. And I'm just wondering if part of your social policy aspect is also out there, in Washington and New York to try to change that.
Yes.
So that what happened in 2008 doesn't happen again.
Yes, we are. We are the alternative voice of Wall Street, and we do go there. And Congress folks are always surprised because we're with the financial services industry, and we want reform and we want regulation. So they're always surprised to hear from us. Now, we're not in their face like the other lobbyists are weekly, so they don't hear our voice as often. But yes, we absolutely need to let them know that we think that they're putting the entire system at risk by not doing their job. But it's amazing how much power the financial industry really has, and they as we know, because of campaign finance, they have a lot of influence, and that's something we would like to undo. We would love to see a constitutional. We'd love to see a constitutional amendment that would declare corporations are not people entitled to individual rights.
Yeah.
That's going to be a challenge to make that happen.
It's a shame.
But I would like to see that happen.
Yeah.
Move to Amend is a great national organization that's trying to create that constitutional amendment. You know, will 3/4 of state legislatures pass something like that? I don't know. But I think the important thing is that money has got to get out of that system.
Yeah.
It's corrupting
you're doing
it.
more than just the environmental issues.
Yeah.
You're doing the
Everything.
whole investment issue.
Yeah, I told you, we're trying to change capitalism.
Yeah.
It is a structural
Yeah.
change.
What do you think is changing anyway, though? I mean, to some extent. I hear this from other people,
Yeah.
maybe not so directly pointed into it as you are,
Yeah.
but people are really not satisfied with capitalism anymore.
That's right. Well, because it's been exploited. And I think the only shift that's happening is people want to stop that. They don't think it's worth making money literally off the backs of people, whether it's low-income people in Bangladesh making apparel or what oil companies do in the Amazon. People don't feel good about having their way of life created by that type of exploitation.
Huge disparity.
And now we know about it. See, it used to be that we just didn't know that those things were going on. Well, now we know. And it's hard to shy away once you know. It's like this burden of knowledge that you have, and it doesn't feel good. There's got to be many other ways to make money. And so, this is a global phenomenon. There are social investment forums on every continent now, all pursuing the same path. The United Nations has the principles for responsible investment, a lot of institutional stakeholders. So this has really caught on. This is really mainstreamed. The big banks, even Morgan Stanley has an impact investment wing now, getting into it. So that's very interesting to see that. This was a fringe concept, and I got started 25 years ago. There were maybe 12 mutual funds you could buy. And now it's really a huge industry with hundreds of options, and it's exciting.
Great. You stuck with it. You stayed in it.
Yeah.
So all of that. So you're in Kona, is it?
I am, yeah.
And this is sort of an odd place well, I guess for environmental purposes, it's the right place. But for a stockbroker in Kona, most stockbrokers are national or here.
Yeah.
And you have this great philosophy, a growing philosophy, a growing, a fertility of the field, so to speak, on that philosophy. And you decide you're going to write a book.
Sure.
First book? Is this the first one?
For me, it's the third book for our firm.
Okay.
So we have this history of book writing, but the first one for me.
Okay, so what led you to this book?
The downturn of '08 really was a huge wake-up call. It was the perfect storm of bad news, and there was nowhere to flee for safety. And it really did make us look really hard about what are we doing? What are we recommending here? It revealed the inherent risks in the system. So we really started to think about, well, what else can we do to further diversify and help people think differently? Because I think we did assume, and I think rightly so, that fixing that system would probably take a long time. Despite Dodd-Frank, I think we knew it was going to be a long haul.
And deeply ingrained,
It is.
Everybody's used to it. It's momentum.
Yeah. And people, every time there's a crash, people say, oh, don't worry, we'll bounce back. And historically, the cycles of the markets seem to reveal that to be so. But we felt something was different this time, and there were two key differences. One, the interconnectedness of all the economies and how much of a domino effect that seems to have nowadays, more than ever.
Very scary.
More vulnerability everywhere. So there was that. And the other thing is the climate change risk is fundamentally different than any types of other risks that we have faced. This is a planetary risk. And we felt like if you're going to really take that seriously, we really need to start to become ready for disruptions, and both disruptions in the economy, because part of the thing that gets lost in all the conversation about climate change is what it could do to the economy and the impact that it can have on your portfolio, you know. And that type of risk is real, and we were really wanting to tackle that and help people learn how to, you know, be prepared for that. And so that was the primary motivation for wanting to write something a little different. You know, we've written 2 books on values-based investing in the past, on green investing, and we didn't want to do that again. We'd already done that. We'd already made that case.
Okay.
It does seem to be mainstreaming, so that, you know, we didn't need to do that again. But for those people who have really questioned the fundamental essence of the system, what about them? Because if you're a doomer, if you will, and you think things...
It's good cause to be a doomer these days.
Yeah, I'm not taking I mean, I happen to be all the way on the other side as a dreamer,
fine.
But if you're a doomer, probably shouldn't be in the market.
At all?
At all.
Okay.
I mean, I would suggest, if you don't have any faith in the system,
Yeah.
why are you putting your money in it?
Yeah, put it in gold under your mattress.
Well, that's the historical, you know, place to put that. But one of the reasons we wanted to write the book is to say, well, owning gold doesn't do anything positive for the world. It's just a parking place.
Right.
So we wanted to really think,
And you could lose it under the mattress.
You
too.
can, and it goes up and down in
It's got
value
its own
too.
vulnerability.
It does, right? I mean, what are you going to do? Go down to the car dealership with your bullion and buy a car?
Somebody could come and take it from you.
Well, there's that.
price
I
could,
mean,
you know,
there's
drop
a lot
down, who knows
of there's
what,
a lot of issues there. So, you know, part of it is how can we invest differently? And I think what all we wanted to say is hedge your bets on the system. You know, regardless if you're right or wrong, if you're a doomer or a dreamer or somewhere in between, what if your perspective is wrong? Right? And people are very entrenched in their positions. There's a lot of folks who think they're pretty sure of themselves about what the future is going to hold. And all I would say to them is, well, yeah, maybe, but you might also not be right. So one of the things we wanted to do is help people, regardless of where they are on that doomer-dreamer continuum, is understand that there's investment strategies for everybody. And,
so this is by the three people in your firm?
The partners, yes.
And Jim Cummings helps you write.
He's our editor, yeah.
Editor, okay. And this is not necessarily intended to, you know, tout the firm or bring people into the firm. It's intended to provide, my looking at it anyway, intended to provide a system for the individual person.
Yeah.
To get on board with this philosophy, whether he chooses to do that
right.
in his own right alone, sitting at the computer,
sure,
or whether he chooses to do it with a firm like yours, doesn't
right.
have to be yours.
We're educators.
Or educators.
We are educators.
Yeah.
That's why we write books.
Yeah.
We write books for the people who want to do it themselves. They have tools that they can use and
yeah.
go do it themselves. Sure, some people are going to come our way and want us to help them. Fine, that's great, but that's not enough. You know, we need everybody to start thinking along these lines, in our opinion, in order to create widespread change. And so, you know, millions of people need to start thinking this way in our view, and not just the handful that might come our way. It's a challenge to think about your time and your energy as investments. And that's part of what we really wanted to do is think, you know, if you're planning your life, it isn't only just about money. It really has a lot to do with all kinds of relationships that you have, including the one you have with yourself and your belief system and your spiritual practices or your career or your home.
Notice that. This is a whole way of life you're talking
yeah.
about.
That's why the subtitle of the book is A Plan for Your Life, Not Just Your Money, because we really want, everything that you do is an investment. And I just really wanted people, we just really wanted people to think about that, because a lot of people don't have money, they don't have surplus cash. And yet, everything they buy is an investment. Every place they shop is an investment.
And it's a vote.
Whatever it is, it's also a vote. But also, you know, what you do inside your own house is an investment. What you do in your neighborhood, what you do at the civic clubs you belong to or your church, these are all investments. You're there to help people. You're there to develop your faith, whatever that is. And most of us just do want to be helpful in the world. So part of what we wanted to do was help people understand or provide a framework for how they could look at it holistically. And you have personal assets, you have tangible assets, and you have financial assets, and they could all be working together seamlessly in our system.
Do you talk about community too? Do you talk about people getting together
Yes.
and having that kind of power of numbers you were describing a minute ago.
Yes, I mean, one of the investment strategies that we have in the book really is about, we call it close to home. And that can happen at the community level, because this is where a lot of people are day to day, and this is where you can see money circulating to create businesses. It's where you can be investing in churches and nonprofit organizations that are doing really good work. And the community resilience strategies are good because they can help prepare a community for disruptions. Part of Hawaii's vulnerability, we know our lifeline is the shipping industry. So community resiliency has a lot to do with food self-sufficiency and energy self-sufficiency, and dealing responsibly with our waste, and building homes out of materials that perhaps we can grow here. Mm-hmm. So substituting for imports, becoming less reliant on imports to prop up our civilization. This is not just something that is happening here in Hawaii. A lot of communities around the country are thinking this way, because they're thinking we need to be prepared for anything, because if there are disruptions due to whatever reason, geopolitical or economic, how do we take care of ourselves and not just survive but thrive? We want to be able to thrive. And so when we think about resilience, it's not just about bouncing back from a disaster. It really is about bouncing back better. We want to improve how we're living our lives, mm-hmm. to avoid these kinds of catastrophes.
Well, you've sort of bridged new gaps on this, in the sense that it's investing not only money, it's investing time, it's investing effort, investing your thought process, and it's having an effect, everywhere. And I wonder, and making a sort of daily philosophy out of it, a daily way of living life. This is more than a stock investment book by far.
Definitely.
And the question is, can I do that? If I embrace this as my Bible,
yeah,
and I find my own values. A lot of them would be your values, but maybe some of them would be different. Right. My own values, having the clarity of thought to do that.
Yeah.
Can I do it exclusively? Do I not have to work? Can I sit and make the right picks and be efficient in terms of energy and all other environmental issues, and dedicate myself just to that? Could I do that?
I'm an optimist, so I believe anything's possible. It just depends on who you are. Part of what we do is we lead people through a self-assessment process of taking inventory on what your assets really are. Mm-hmm. Like, who are you? All the inflows and outflows that come into your life, all the relationships
your age,
you have,
your relationships,
right? All the
health,
all your concentric circles of influence that you have, whether it's with your kids,
that's great,
or all the way out.
You would talk to me about that.
Absolutely. This is all about really thinking about all of it. And then what you start to realize once you assess all of those assets that you have, it's very empowering, because suddenly you realize, wow, my wealth, the real abundance and the true wealth that I have is much bigger than the dollar.
Well, wealth is a person on the planet.
Absolutely.
My effect on the planet.
It is. And so once you realize that, you can also see where the pukas are. Yeah. You can see, these areas I'm really strong. I'm really good at these types of capacities that I've developed within myself. And then I can see these areas where, I could really use some focused attention here. There's something here, a dream that I've always had that I haven't quite been able to focus on. And so it really just makes it obvious when people go through a life planning process. They can see where they're strong, where they're weak, and then they can make asset allocation decisions, if you will, as to where they want to put their time and their energy and their money to build up those areas of deficit, and or to get stronger in the areas where they already have strength. So some of that might be a change of career, it might be a change in their shopping habits, it might be a change in where they bank, it might be a change in their investment approach, it might be changes at their home life in terms of their house and efficiency measures. It might be, there's so many different realms of your life. And there's also people who just want to change the system, whatever that is. They want to change it.
I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Exactly. And I think the thing is, and this is what you asked me earlier, how did I get into this? I wanted an antidote to cynicism. Apathy and cynicism will bring us down. We don't need any of that. What we need is solutions.
It's very unique in this sense. We talk about these problems.
Right.
Everybody. If you go out in the street right now, outside, and say you guys believe in the environment, every man jack will say, I believe in the environment.
Sure.
And you get a lot of talk.
Right.
And then you get probably a second degree of, he'll go to the legislature and he'll make testimony, but he'll be talking too.
Right.
This is different. This is beyond that. On a single basis, a single person basis,
Yeah.
you can put your head on the pillow every night and think that you actually did something for it.
Yeah.
You personally have the power to do that.
Yes.
And on a community basis, assuming you can reach out and touch other people who think the same way, you can have a huge effect on it. That's different than just talking.
Yeah, well, part of what the apathy and the cynicism stems from is a sense of disenfranchisement, a sense of victimization.
Yeah.
Like the man out there is doing something to me. And it's very easy to blame society. It's very easy to blame the legislature. It's very easy to blame capitalism or religion or pick your enemy.
Yeah.
The federal government, whatever. That's so easy. That is not a solution. Being angry is not a solution. Now, it can be a great motivator. But ultimately, the power is about what are you going to do with your life? You make decisions. We make decisions every single day about our time and our energy and our money every single day. Well, just be more conscious of what you're doing, and you can direct your own life in the places that you really want it to go. And I really, I hope that people can get that, because, being mad is great, and I certainly, write the letters on bills that I care about to try to stop things or regulate things, and that's an important aspect of participating in a society, but it's only one very small portion of your life. And most of your life really is about how are you dealing with your own food and your own water and your own survival needs.
Action.
And
Action.
you can take steps from now, whether you're in college and have no money,
But here's
or
a
whether
limitation.
you're really wealthy and you have tons of extra money.
Here's a limitation, though.
Mhm.
It's like Hawaii may feel, as a state, as a society, that it wants to do something about climate change.
Right.
And so, first thing, it builds walls, and second thing, it does a lot of renewable energy, and it takes all the steps you would imagine
Yeah.
to fix climate. But it's only one little speck in the ocean.
Sure.
And you have the whole world out there. And there's
Right.
a certain frustration in feeling that you're going to do it. You're going to sacrifice.
Yeah.
You're going to spend your time and money doing this, and it has a beneficial effect on the world. But the world isn't going to do it for you.
That's true.
So you're alone.
Right.
And maybe it's the same way. I mean, I criticize a company for labor practices in Indonesia, for example, and I'm going
Right.
to vote against them by
Right.
my investment. But people on Wall Street are going to vote for them, and they're going to continue to exist.
Sure.
And I'm whistling in the wind. How do you
Yeah.
answer that?
We have to do it all. There's no simplistic solution to that. If you sell your stock, someone else is buying it.
Yeah.
So absolutely, that's one of the reasons why we're trying to make the larger case through research, through advocacy, regulatory issues. We're hoping that we can help people understand that all of it matters. That being said, that's a very, changing policy at the state or national level is a long-term process. And it can be frustrating, the pace of that type of change. So in the meantime, while that work is going on by those of us who have been appointed and elected to do that work, we're gonna fight those battles. And in the meantime, what can you do? What do you have power over? And I think ultimately that is an equal part of this conversation. And Hawaii absolutely should get its act together and act regardless of what's going on with the rest of the world while we're trying to change what's going on in Washington. Because we have a lot more say about how we live our lives here than we have about anything else.
Right.
This is
Leadership by
this is our
example.
community, right? Lead by example. And that leadership comes with you in your own house, in your neighborhood, your block, and people are coming together as neighbors and starting to think about joint strategies. How do we, and everybody's not going to be a farmer, but having a community garden or a community-supported agriculture project where we're shareholders as neighbors in a farm, well, that makes a lot of sense. So there are innovative models out there for people who want to think and behave differently locally, things they can participate in, that I think will increase their resilience, for one thing, and make them less dependent, on the global system for shipping their food in.
Yeah, and it's the ultimate cynicism to say, I'm not going to do anything to fix this problem because he's not.
Right,
That's
and
really
big business in this
unacceptable.
country says that all the time. We say, well, China first. Well, that's a cheap and easy excuse.
Yeah.
Yes, ideally we would all be doing it together. But does that mean nobody should do it? No. We'll kill ourselves with nothingness by not doing anything, and that's not really what we want to do here. I'm trying to find our species' survival instinct here, is what I'm really hoping.
As a collective species,
yeah, we're
the world species.
The world species. We are humanity.
And I wanted to ask you about that. I mean,
Yeah.
we have this, emanating from natural investments, and you guys. It's a book that, it's got a Hawaii flavor to it, although I'm sure it's a national, if not an international look at things. But query, can this go international? Do you feel that there's fertile ground out there, say in Europe, South America,
Yes.
Even Asia, to do the same things? Are you working toward that? Do you feel
Yeah.
that's a possibility?
There are 7 social investment forums on the different continents, including one in Asia. And so, yes, we might be the leaders in certain respects of this way of thinking, but it is catching on. And we're going to be, the different social investment forums are going to be publishing their first joint global research report, showing all the trends around the world. So yes, this is catching on. And in some places like Europe, they are surpassing us when it comes to renewable energy.
I know that.
So, we're not necessarily the leaders in everything. Part of what we're trying to do in some countries, there aren't watchdog groups or NGOs that care about holding companies accountable. So there's a lot more work to be done there, but our leadership can really help there. I think this is a global phenomenon. I don't really feel like we should be thinking short term about competitive advantage between countries. Honestly, and this will be a theme of my next book that I'm already starting to work on, is I think this idea of countries is probably going to have to disappear. We probably are going to have to start thinking as we're a planetary civilization and we ought to all be working together. And tariffs and wars we should all just come together and try to solve problems collectively in a much more cohesive and collaborative way than we ever have before. I feel like, us versus China and us versus Russia, and this is an old way of thinking. And I think that it's time for it to go.
Yeah, borders are dissolving. I really am delighted. So what is that? That's the basic theme of your next book.
Well, it's one of the solutions that I'd like to explore further as I continue writing. I got the writing bug from participating in this book. And because I'm a dreamer and I'm not a doomer, I continue to want to, write and champion, wild, innovative ideas that I think could be game changers. Because some of the systems that we have might need to go. Yeah. Whether it's the Electoral College, or even the idea of countries. I just think some traditions are worth preserving, and others are worth a really hard look at maybe dismantling them. Maybe we have evolved beyond them, maybe, and we should have the guts to be bold and say, in the face of all this uncertainty and all this volatility and the ambiguity and complexity of everything, maybe we should redesign some things that can match where we are. Yeah. This is not 1800 or 1900.
But you're not advocating for the overthrow of the world.
Of course not.
This is all sort of an evolutionary process you're describing, as in the book and in your next book.
Yeah, I think that we're talking about evolving consciousness. And when you evolve consciousness, you do things differently. You don't just do things the way you've always done them because that's how you were raised. You start to think, how can I be improving things? And sometimes the improvements need to be structural in nature or systemic in nature. And that is why we started this conversation with transforming capitalism, because it has some modus operandi that deserve to go into the toilet. And
so let's
do that. Let's change that system,
Well, okay, this is the Resilient Investor, a plan for your life. I noticed that right away. Not just your money, with Hal Brill, Michael Kramer, Christopher Peck, with Jim Cummings. Thrive in turbulent times. Where is it available?
It's available everywhere, anywhere. Barnes & Noble here in the state, as well as all the online retailers and local bookstores throughout the islands as well.
Could be the most total investment book you ever saw in terms of reaching every part of your life and consciousness. Well, I told you before, you can face the camera.
Okay.
Why don't you tell them what you would like to leave them with as a result of this discussion?
Well, what I would say is that I think resilience is the new sustainability, if you will. Not that I'm not a fan of sustainability. It's been a big part of my life for 25, 30 years. But I think resilience is the new skill set that we're going to need. And one of the reasons we wrote the book was to help people be ready for anything. And while we're out there trying to create a sustainable civilization, let's also learn how to be prepared for any volatility that may arise. And certainly our firm and this book can help you do that and give you tools and strategies that can apply to your life right now.
Thanks, Michael.